It's James, your YouTube color consultant, and today is all about the beautiful Benjamin Moore paint color called Wickham Gray. It's a color that I've used quite extensively. I often deem it as your starter go-to spa color, and that's because ultimately it is gray, but it has this lovely cool blue undertone that helps it feel really lively and buoyant, and it separates itself from the warmer neutrals that we've seen, all those grays like classic gray and edgecomb gray. This one's a bit different, so let's get into this episode of Color Quickie. So not only am I going to tell you all about Wickham Gray, I'm going to give you some technical information regarding it, but I'm also going to give you some trim color options that you can paint your baseboards with, and then finally at the end, I got 3 color pairings that I've handpicked just to go with Wickham Gray, so that way you're all set with your next project. So first things first, I like to talk about the LRV of a color. This is the light reflectance value, and it's going to tell you exactly how light or dark the color will appear, because this is a number that represents the percentage of light that a color reflects. So in Wickham Gray's case, it's just under 68 out of 100. So that is definitely on the lighter half of colors. Not crazy light and bright. There is still some saturation present, but at the same time, I find in person, this is a color that will read as pretty airy and fresh. It's a phenomenal choice if you're into the more coastal vibes or more contemporary color scheme that leans a little more into the metallic materials, cooler leaning colors in general. But what I like about it is it's very subtle. It doesn't feel like a blue. It is Wickham Gray after all, not Wickham Blue, but I find it perfectly incorporates with other neutrals regardless of their color temperature. For example, I often incorporate Wickham Gray with colors like REVERE PEWTER, which are a little more on the warmer side of things, but they're both sort of half and half. These are colors that have a foot in different doors, right? A little bit warm, a little bit cool, can kind of play both ways, which is really, really nice. It makes it very easy to use, I find, in a lot of situations, especially in rooms like bathrooms and bedrooms, the more chill rooms where you want to chill out with a chilly color like this, but also in the more open areas like hallways, living areas, dining rooms, kitchens. Just be mindful though that if you're not really used to cooler colors like this, test it out before you do, because it will have a very specific look to it. It might even be a little complementary to your flooring. So if you do have hardwood, let's say, that is warmer leaning, there's a good chance you'll notice how cool Wickham Gray can sometimes look. But dare I remind you, just test your colors out. Everything's theoretical, but put things in practice, get a tester pot, put it on your wall, see how it looks. Now, assuming you're really into Wickham Gray, it's the color for you, I'm really happy for you, because it's really hard to just solidify color choices sometimes. So now that you've picked your color for your walls, what about your trim color? So your baseboards, your doors, your frames, casings, crown molding, whatever the case may be, I would recommend a color like Mountain Peak White for a lot of you. Anytime you want a go-to trim color, usually pick a white or an off-white because it'll feel fresh, clean, and new. And Mountain Peak White has a lovely crispness to it. It does lean a little bit warmer though, which might go against with what some of you might think is necessary. If Wickham Gray is cooler, then maybe just go with a cooler white as well. I really enjoy Mountain Peak White's creaminess. It'll help accentuate the color found in Wickham Gray, so they will play off each other in a really nice way. Now, if you want something that's pure white and very stark, then you can maybe go for something like Super White or ultra white, maybe Chantilly lace, some of those colors. But for me, design-wise, especially in this palette, Mountain Peak White would be my go-to. As for a slightly darker trim color, if maybe you want something a little more curated and special, you can go with Coventry Gray. And this is a very, very easy choice because essentially you can interpret it as a darker version of Wickham Gray. They are neighbors in the HC Historical Colors collection by Benjamin Moore, and they're even on the same color chip for good reason. They go together really, really nicely. There is just enough of a difference in depth where it should be visibly noticeable in person, but it's going to be a little more subtle than you might think. Not going to be a huge jarring black and white bit of contrast. It is just a couple steps darker, but I kind of like that. I think it's a very understated, less is more, quiet luxury approach. Now, as far as your color pairings are concerned, I went for a warm neutral first. It's called London Fog. It has a slight red undertone to it, so I would kind of call it a rougey gray, beigey color, maybe a light tan sort of feel. It has a very soft coloration overall, and I think it suits Wickham Gray really, really well. It has a little more depth to it. It is a darker color, ever so slightly, but they're still within that acceptable realm for most people, which is in the high 50s, low to mid 60s. It will reflect a good amount of light but it's not going to feel washed out ever. You're going to be able to see the coloration in most circumstances, which I think is a plus. And it does have a slightly complementary relationship with Wickham Gray. You have the warm and you have the cool, so really they're pretty interchangeable depending on the space that you're using them in. Maybe if you want to lean into the warmth of your natural wood floors, London Fog could be a better choice, or you have a space with white tile, let's say, or off-whites, maybe other grays, then Wickham Gray could be a good choice. Now, my second color pairing is an interesting choice. It has a lot of similarities to Wickham Gray, but it's going to be leaning a little more to the warm side of things, replacing gray blue with some gray green. It's called Par 4, and this color has nearly the same amount of lightness as Wickham Gray, but it also has this lovely, nearly pastel soft green that has just enough warmth to really separate itself in a beautiful way. Par 4 has that subtle difference between Wickham Gray, but again, it might just suit one of your spaces that much better. Anywhere you want a little bit of uplifting zing and energy, that's what this warmth will do. There is a touch of that kind of yellow gold happening underneath it, so it's not really going to feel cool unless you have very cold lighting, but I wouldn't really know that. Only you would if you tested your colors out, so another reminder. And then our third color pairing is the accent color, I would say. It's the darkest color for sure. It has a beautiful combination of blue-gray and a tiny bit of green here. Sort of navy, but really it's more of a dark denim. It's blue spruce, one of my favorite trees that I'm thinking of using in my yard. But essentially this color seems like the evolution, the deepening of Wickham Gray, because you do have all those little bits from the other colors, the blue, the green, the gray, but taken to a much darker degree. It's a nearly 17 LRV. You want to make sure that you're using this in a space that gets sufficient lighting, and if you're not, then just keep in mind that your room might feel kind of cave-like because it's not reflecting much light at all. Now, even though London Fog doesn't really have a lot of parallels with this color, they work really well together as well. That classic blue and beige combination, but I would say they do have that soft, toned down feel, generally speaking. Really, there's a lot of mix and matching you can do in this palette. Speaking of which, here's the palette right here. And of course, if you enjoy these videos, press that subscribe button to stay up to date. You can support us even further by becoming a channel member by clicking that join button, or you can just click this video right over here.